What's up, guys?
We did it, guys. Finally got Mikey to come over to my place to do some whiskey reviews. We usually do the reviews on Mikey's bar, but today we're chilling in my new place. I actually recently moved. We got a little decoration whiskey wall behind us. Nothing too crazy on there. I'm paranoid about putting expensive bottles on there just in case something happens, but today we're gonna review a Springbank. I want to kind of walk up to the camera, different setup. Let me show you guys the bottle. This is Springbank 1997 vintage, bottled in 2017, so a 20-year-old, bottled by the Whisky Broker. It's a single cask. Only 268 bottles of these. This is bottle 112, so obviously very rare. And it is bottled at 48.9% ABV. So we got this beautiful dark color. Obviously no colorant added or chill filtration when it comes to any Springbank bottles. And we got this at an auction. It is a fairly new bottle. There's a lot of buzz. Not a lot of buzz, but there's quite a few people who we heard from that this was an excellent bottle. Noticed it on auctions and decided to pick it up to try. We opened it over the holidays and we want to review it now. So as you guys saw when I brought the bottle up close, it's got a nice, rich, very dark color to it.
Beautiful dark color.
And as you roll it in the glass, the camera's a little further away from us, but it's just completely glues. Completely
Oozy.
Yeah.
Oozy sticky glue, yeah.
Some sticky glue is exactly the word. So this has been breathing for a little more than 30 minutes. Don't always think whiskey needs to breathe as long as some people say. This particular one definitely does. I kind of go whiskey by whiskey. Some whiskeys are 40 years old and they've done plenty of breathing in the cask already. After 5-10 minutes of breathing, you're really is there. But this one, 20 years old, it really requires a good 30 minutes of being poured in the glass for it to kind of open up the right way. So for me, it's a kind of whiskey to whiskey kind of thing, not it's 20 years old, it has to be 20 minutes, it's 40 years old, it has to be 40 minutes. I think it varies from whiskey to whiskey. So, without further ado, on the nose. It's got a very delicious nose, but it being a single cask, it doesn't. It's not easy to know that it's a Springbank. If I nosed it blindly, I wouldn't be like, oh, this is definitely a Springbank. It definitely has some funk. Like Springbank has a lot of funk to it, but it's not an obvious Springbank. It's more sherry funk, if anything. The cask is what's really speaking here more than the distillery characteristics. So obviously it's a great cask, but it's more just about the cask, not necessarily, wow, this is a Springbank. That being said,
yeah, because I get, like we talk about, I get more of that kind of old, dank, moldy sherry that's characteristic of a lot of fine sherry whiskeys. You don't get as much of either the cola or kind of the sherry vinaigrette that is unique to Springbank, or those malty cereal notes that are really good with Springbank. But this cask is awesome.
It's very rich. It's very thick on the nose, heavy on like that toffee and caramel and chocolate. And I almost want to say like Burns toffee, just very, very dark, like this color suggests, is kind of what you get.
You didn't tell me this could be a Macallan.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to know.
And there are different aspects to the sherry. It isn't just the dessert and the toffee flavors like you're saying. There's a lot of crazy, dark, rich, like glazed fruits and nuts, glazed almonds.
It's not off-putting, and one of the main reasons why you want to let this one breathe. It's got that kind of like gunpowdery, kind of fire, kind of approaching that sulfuriness. So, full-on sulfur tends to be kind of rotteny. It's not like that. It's more smoky and gunpowdery.
Yeah, it's more. I'd say like I would say more like kind of toasted wood versus burnt wood. So like Narby's saying, not rotten at all, but kind of like he's saying about the toasted toffee, this kind of toasted wood, kind of flaming wood element that highlights all the fruits and the chocolate and the toffee.
And if you do really let this breathe, and I did put 2 drops of water in this when I poured it, and it has that kind of like dark fruit element to it in the background as well. It needs time to kind of come through, and a little water to come through, but like chocolate covered raspberries, rather than saying like oozing of fresh raspberries, it's more like chocolate covered raspberries. So you do get hints of that fruitiness as well, but it's all covered with that burnt toffee, that kind of like, that burnt wood, and along with that layer of chocolate, so that those rich desserty elements kind of do take over, but you do get elements of fruits like raspberries in there as well.
Exactly, but like you're saying, it's more in the background.
Yeah.
It's highlighting the chocolate or the toffee, the dessert.
And that's why it is a very complex whiskey in that sense, where you do need to let it breathe for the things to kind of pop up. It just doesn't speak to you right away. So it improves quite a bit with some breathing. And this bottle has only been open for just a couple weeks only. So I assume that if we put this thing away and bring it back in about a year or so, it'll change quite a bit.
I bet it will evolve and get better and better.
It'll get better, yeah. You could tell with most of the whiskeys that have a little bit of that sulfur in the background, this one not being off-putting in any way, some of them being off-putting, this one's not one of them. But usually when you let the bottle breathe after you've had a few drams, it kind of tends to slowly start going away, and the whiskey does change. On the palate?
Yes, sir.
Love the ABV on this. I did put 2 drops of water.
Oh yeah, dude.
But it really speaks. It's 48.9. But it drinks like a delicious, like a 49. It's 49%. It drinks like a delicious 50% whiskey.
Oh, that's awesome.
With a couple drops of water, it brings it down a little bit, but you get that full-blown sherry attack from the back all the way to the front. You get that burnt caramel and burnt toffee, and the chocolate, that dark raspberry is in there as well. You definitely get the wood play integrates, and a little bit of that matchstick, gunpowder, slight sulfur, whatever you want to call it.
Fresh sweet matchsticks.
Find the right word for it. It's not off-putting in this whiskey, so I don't want to use the word sulfur. More like matchstick, gunpowder. That's a little bit in the background. Almost there's like this barbecue element to it, right? Almost like a barbecued ham with like burnt brown sugar on top.
Yeah. Well, and that's the complexity, because first sip, it was just a blast of your typical sherry dessert party, like your Macallan 18 dessert party, toffee, fudge, dark chocolate, deep, rich, soaked dried figs, dried dates, dried raspberries, blackberries. But then that kind of dissipates, and this is where the complexity comes on. All of a sudden, it is like the fresh or kind of sweet matchsticks, and then a little tobacco kicks in. A little like toasted vanilla kicks in. Almost coconut kicks in. And then you do get this kind of background like barbecue element, almost like you're saying, like sweet barbecued meats, like ham, maybe something like that Spanish ham, Iberico, whatever. And man, just getting more and more complex as your palate's exposed to it.
Yeah, this whiskey goes in the auction. I don't know what the original price was for this whiskey. I wasn't familiar with it. It was already in the auction world before 268 bottles, things like this can just fly off the shelves. The thing with you guys do know that Springbank is our favorite distillery. Current Springbank bottles, a lot of the gems that come out now tend to be single cask, independent bottler Springbanks. And they're so hard to find. So that's the problem. Like, really, really good Springbanks out there, but how do you get a hold of them? It's so hard. Then they hit the auction world and they double and triple in price. This one, we got this one for around 300 pounds. So about, I don't know, close to $400. So it's an expensive bottle. It's probably, that's kind of where it kind of belongs in that category, that $400 range. So it's probably a fair price. It's a lot of money, but comparing it to other whiskeys in the same price, it kind of belongs there. I'm not rushing to get a second bottle. If I try this, do I rush out to get one? I'm not rushing out to get one, but I'm happy that we own it. Want to see what happens to it. How would you score this?
Well, I was gonna say, I think it needs more time in the bottle.
Yeah.
I think maybe like in a year or two, you might rush out to get the second bottle.
Yeah,
I think it needs more time. But right now, as it is, I would give this an 88 out of 100.
And I was thinking somewhere in the 89 to 90 range, and I think it definitely can get to 90. But for me, I'm going to score it at an 89 right now. And again, if you watched our reviews, we're getting a little stricter on our ratings. We've been trying some crazy stuff, and it just naturally brings down the score of all our bottles. Keep saying that in case you haven't seen all our other reviews. But an 89 is a very good score, which means absolutely love it. And I just said it's a $400 bottle, and I kind of think it belongs in that category. So, excellent whiskey. We're gonna do a few reviews tonight. Probably do like 4 or 5 reviews here. We're just kind of hanging out, and decided to do some reviews at my place. All right, you guys. We'll see you guys soon. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers.